Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I may repeat a few things that you said, so forgive me if I do, but I'm honored to be here today to recognize the men and women of the United States military. They share a dedication to the defense of freedom in the same spirit that for generations has defined America as the home of the brave. They're the valiant soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen of our nation's armed forces. They are our American veterans. John Quincy Adams said, "You will never know how much it has cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it." Freedom. For much of the world, freedom is a luxury, the privilege of a few. For Americans, however, our many freedoms are so much a part of the fabric of our lives that many of us take them for granted, and the value and cost of preserving those freedoms are often overlooked. Freedom to participate in our own governance, to worship as we please, to disagree with those in power, to appear as equals before the law. The list of our freedoms is long. We all know the value of freedom, and we look to the men and women who wear the nation's uniform to protect and defend it. It is important to remember that of the 26 million American veterans living across the world today, 3 million are permanently disabled from injuries suffered in our nation's defense. For their sake, it is precisely this value and cost we seek to honor and uphold in our proposed design for the American Veterans Disabled for Life Memorial. It cannot be stressed enough how important it is to recognize the sacrifices that our country's disabled veterans have made on behalf of us all. I was deeply moved to have been asked to participate in the building of this absolutely necessary memorial. I'm honored to serve as the Disabled Veterans Life Memorial Foundation's national spokesperson and can only hope that my participation will help draw attention to the cause and ensure its successful fruition as the nation's first and only such tribute built specifically to remember these courageous men and women. There are many of our brave wounded warriors here today, and some of our service members. Can we please give them a warm round of applause for their service and their sacrifice? As Jerry said, we also welcome 2 members of Congress, Mark Kirk, who is my hometown congressman from Highland Park, Illinois, and Dennis Moore from Kansas, who are leading the effort to secure passage of commemorative coin legislation in the House of Representatives that will have an important and lasting impact on the memorial. Thank you both for being here. And as Jerry said again, and finally, Christian Baggy, a young man who joined President Bush for a run at the White House after they met at Walter Reed during his rehabilitation. Christian will give voice to the disabled veterans when he shares his thoughts on building the American Veterans Disabled for Life Memorial later on. Now, I'd like to take a little moment to explain how I got actively involved with supporting our veterans and their issues. Over the years, people have asked me if it had something to do with a certain film that I acted in a while back. It actually predates my work as Lieutenant Dan Taylor, the disabled Vietnam veteran in Forrest Gump. I have There's veterans in my family. My grandfather served in World War I. My father served in the Navy. My uncle was a navigator on a B-17 during World War II, flying and surviving 30 missions over Europe. And there's military that runs on both my wife's side and my side of the family. But in 1980, I had the privilege of seeing a group of Vietnam veterans perform a play they had written that was based on their experience during the war in Vietnam. It was an incredibly moving experience. It was a moving piece of theater, and it made me think back to what I'd been doing when I was 19 years old. While others were fighting in the jungles of Vietnam, I was not really paying much attention. Although as a freshman in high school, I remember attending an anti-war rally without actually knowing what was going on. It was really just to get out of class. That was a distant war to me, and something that was happening over there, not here. Even though it was broadcast every night on the nightly news, it didn't seem to affect me. Crazy things were happening here at home, but I just went on being a kid, living in a free country, enjoying the benefits of that. But when I saw this play, it was a play called Tracers, and it was a play performed by the men who had fought and survived that war. A tremendous feeling of guilt and sadness came over me. I thought back to what I was doing when I was their age and how unaware I was of what these young men were going through so far from home, and how an ungrateful nation received them when they came home. A fine piece of theater can truly rattle your senses and awaken the soul. And I knew, sitting stunned and silent in the empty theater afterwards, that I wanted to do something to help make more people aware of the experiences of our Vietnam heroes. They deserved our gratitude, and they never got it. My wife Moira's two brothers both served in Vietnam. One was a helicopter pilot, the other an infantry officer. The officer, Boyd Harris, West Point graduate, served 2 tours, first as a lieutenant, and then he went back as a captain. The military was his career, and I was able to have many, many long discussions with him about his 2 tours in Vietnam, which was also great preparation for the work ahead. And a few years later, I was fortunate enough to be able to produce and direct this play at Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, the theater I founded with my friends back in the mid-'70s. Sadly, Boyd died of cancer as rehearsals began. He died a lieutenant colonel at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And he was the military aspect of Lieutenant Dan was very much modeled on my wife's brother, Mac. He was a very courageous, heroic, dedicated American service member, and I learned a lot from him. His death made me even more determined to honor these heroes with a great production of this play. During the course of our work on this play, my cast and I spent many, many hours with local Vietnam veterans who were struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. We spent hours and hours at the VA listening to some of these veterans pour their tragic experiences onto the floor for us to see. So vividly they talked about it, not at first, but eventually they trusted us and knew that we would try our best to honor them with our performances. So they helped us to understand their pain, and the play became sort of a healing device for them.